It has been a while. I hope you all have been doing well. I've been very busy recently. In the past 4 months, I have been building a soundproof room. In this video, I want to show all the various parts involved in this building. I will also highlight some tools that I used along the way. First, it all starts with some planning. These were my original plans, which I made in the months before beginning this project. I start with the wall panels. I cut the pieces down to size using this DeWalt table saw. I plan to make another video soon about the tools that I recommend, and this is first on the list. I think for the price, this table saw is a sweet spot. I cut a groove along the edge using a cobalt router table. I cut 45 degrees off the corners so these pieces fit together like a picture frame. I assembled the panel using 4 studs and 1 plywood backing. The grooves are what will secure the plywood body, giving the wall more support. The goals for this project were that it be a padded room on all sides with a desk. I wanted it also to be able to be disassembled and portable, so the parts needed to be friction fit. Simultaneously, I wanted it to be strong enough to support the weight of an adult on top. There's an abundance of tools out there, and when I started, I didn't know about a lot of them. I hope that by demonstrating the use of a bunch of common tools, this will help anyone who is interested in picking up this hobby. This project involved a lot of tools. I glued them together using wood glue and secured them with this picture frame miter clamp made by Wood River. The nice thing about this clamp is that it's made from standard parts you can get from a hardware store, making it very extensible. For one of the panels, I want to add a wall outlet, and for another, I want to add a light switch. Here I'm cutting out a hole to fit an electrical box. I use a portable Makita router to do the actual cutting. I'm freehanding this and it turned out better than expected. I use an Eric's chisel to clean up the corners. These are great chisels at a very reasonable price. I punch a hole using one of the cutouts using a screwdriver. Now it's time to attach the carpet. I cut out the foam padding using the outline of the panel. I cut out the carpet, leaving a margin of about 3 inches along each side. I cut out the holes in the panels with the outlet or light switch using a Leatherman multi-tool. This honestly works better than the carpet cutter from earlier. Now it's time to attach the carpet. I wrap the carpet around the edges and staple the carpet to the stud. I'm using a power shot here. I do not recommend a staple gun. It is too weak to sink the staple into the wood on many occasions. It also jams up frequently. I probably spent more time unclogging it than actually using it. I recommend a much better staple gun, which I will use later. This is the floor. It is constructed the same way as the walls, but I add extra support to be able to support the weight of a human adult walking around on it. Now I work on the door. I trim it down to size using a Ryobi circular saw. Because the door is hollow core, I needed to extract the bottom and put it back into the door. These are all the hardware and jigs I used to install the door. I use a Milwaukee doorknob jig to drill out the holes for the doorknob. It works well. I use a Ryobi door jig to cut out the plate for the door. I use an electric planer to level the surfaces of the studs that I will use for the edges of the door frame. Now I assemble the door frame by clamping the studs around the door with a 1/8 inch spacer all around. Again, I'm using the picture frame miter clamp to secure the joints until the glue dries. I use a Mousecraft door hinge jig as a template to cut out the space for the door hinges on both the door frame and door. There isn't a template for the door jamb, so I freehand this. I pre-drill the screw holes using a Montana drill bit set and screw the screws in. Now I install the doorknob. I've had this doorknob a few years. It has a lot of history. Maybe this will finally be its permanent home. Moving on, I wire up the light switch. I watched a few YouTube videos before attempting this as I had no prior experience and doing this wrong could be very bad. I jammed the wires into the electrical box and secured the outlet to the electrical box using the included screws. I attached the faceplate using the included screws as well. I'm using these Wago connectors to connect the wires. I'm doing it this way so that the panel is more modular and can be detached from everything for transportation. I do the same thing for the electrical outlet. I strip the wires according to the gauge on the back of the outlet. Make J-hooks on the ends and screw them into the correct ports. I also screw in the unused protruding screws so they don't accidentally make contact with any wires. Then I jam the wires into the electrical box, secure the outlet, and attach the faceplate. I attach Wago connectors to the wires. Time for the ceiling lights. The diameter for the lights seemed to be a little larger than 4 inches, so the hole should have a diameter of 4 1/4 inches. I don't have something to cut such an exact circle, so I decided to use my CNC machine. I used FreeCAD to create such a path for a 1/8 inch bit. In my case, this is a long mill CNC machine. I recommend this machine as a game changer for when I need to cut anything other than straight lines. Now I assembled the ceiling. As the ceiling will need to be able to support weight, I built this to be very sturdy with plenty of cross beams. This is a set of beams that are slightly longer. The ceiling will sit within the walls, and these beams will rest on top of the walls. I attach extra support for the front and back of the room. Now I attach the carpet. I'm now using a DeWalt staple gun. It has much more force, pretty much never clogs, and is easier to use. I recommend this staple gun over the Power Shot, hands down. I cut out the holes for the ceiling lights through the carpet. I wire up the ceiling by threading the wires through pre-cut grooves. The lights come with an electrical box, so wiring them up is fairly straightforward. I just have to strip the wires, jam them into each nut, and put everything back into the electrical box. I installed the ceiling light from below. It has two clips that clip into the back side of the ceiling. Then I reconnect the wire to the electrical box. For the desk, I use aluminum corner braces to hold it up. I cut out an outline of the brace using a router so that the brace will sit more recessed. I clean up the cut using a chisel. I pre-drill the screw holes. In this case, I use 3/8 inch, 1 inch long lag screws. I ratchet them in. I cover these studs in carpet as well. For the outside frame, I use 3-inch corner braces to hold the beams together. I use a bigger router to round over the outside facing edges. Now I wipe 100% tung oil on them. The container is for tried and true linseed oil. I use both of these and I highly recommend them both. Now we move on to the ladder. This is so that people can climb up onto the top of this room where I plan to keep a mattress. I use 1-inch dowels for the steps, secured onto 2x4s. I mark where all the steps should go and I use this drill press to drill out all the holes using a 1-inch mortising bit. I make 4 arms for attaching the ladder to the outside of the room. I cut the corners off so they swivel better. Now I assemble the ladder using glue, a piece of scrap wood, and a lot of hammering. For the desk, I cut a full piece of 4x8 plywood down to size outside using my circular saw. For the corner, I use a router. I cut a few support beams for the desk. I pre-drill the holes where the corner braces will attach. Now I sand the underside of the desk using my Makita random orbital sander. I go through 120 grit, 180 grit, 220 grit, 240 grit, and 320 grit sandpaper. As a kid in school, I found myself always feeling the underside of tables, so I want to pay special attention to it. I attach a border to the desk, which will both give it more strength as well as make it more aesthetically pleasing. I clean up the edges using a flush cutting bit and edge band on the offcut at the beginning of this video. This gets rid of the distracting high contrast plywood edge. I round over the border on both sides. I sand the tabletop with 180 grit, 220 grit, 240 grit, and 320 grit. I'm using 3M's Cubitron. This is also heads and shoulders above all the other sandpaper I've used in the past. Needless to say, I highly recommend it. Now I switch over to micromesh sanding discs to give the surface a high gloss finish. I go through 1500, 1800, 2400, 3200, 3600, 4000, 6000, 8000, and 12,000. Basically the whole kit. It's a lot of time and effort, but I really like the result. Now I glue on the supports to the underside. I pre-assembled the front and back sides of the frame. Now it's time to put it all together. I place the frame in its desired location and screw in the corner braces. I do so for the entire frame. Unfortunately, it seems my camera wasn't able to catch me assembling the top part. With the frame completed, now I start bringing in the panels. I start from the back and work my way forward. I attach the power cord using Wago connectors and run wire up to the outlet and light switch. I connect the outlet using Wago connectors and move the panel in place. I continue with the rest of the wall panels. I attach the light switch using Wago connectors. I run wire from the ceiling lights to the light switch. Now I lift the ceiling into place. This thing is heavy. Getting it in was difficult, but once it was in, the room started to take shape. I tested the lights by turning them on. The room is quite well lit. I slid the door into place. Now I maneuvered the desk in and ratcheted it down. The final touch is to add some handles for ascending the ladder, and we're done. This is something I've been wanting for more than 10 years. I'm glad to have finally made it. It turned out quite well, very similarly to what I had in mind. You may not believe me, but this video is not sponsored, and all these tool recommendations are just what I found to be very useful. If you stuck around until the end of this video, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching me construct my mega project, and I'll see you next time.